Ready? Great. Well, good afternoon, and thank all of you all for coming out. Really for the unveiling of what we believe is going to be yet another improvement to how we approach sexual assault in the Austin community. I think our community knows we've put a lot of work and effort into these investigations over the years, and we have had a focus the past few years on continued improvement. With me here today behind me are members of the executive and command team, along with the district attorney, and a woman that you're going to meet here shortly who made today possible. And then also the committed men and women of the Austin Police Department, both civilian and commissioned, that work in this area every single day with survivors of sexual assault in the efforts to bring justice to them and our community. What we're here today for, though, is to respond to something we identified late last year, early this year, and that was an improvement to the interview process that we have for survivors of sexual assault. As you would expect in many police facilities, the interview rooms are oftentimes what you might see on TV or in the movies and all of that. They're just rather bland rooms, and they're meant for a purpose of just conducting an interview. We recognize the importance of that interview in successful prosecutions and investigations into sexual assault cases, and we learned that the atmosphere in which we were conducting these interviews were not the most conducive for our survivors. And I know the district attorney will talk about that here shortly. But out of that came today, because we identified Project Blvd, a project that is championed by Miss Tracy Matheson, who will speak here shortly. And her story, I think, will capture your attention, because she took a tragedy, a personal tragedy, and turned it into something positive. Turned it into what we're here for today, and that is Project Blvd. Through her hard work and dedication and really financial support, we took the 6 interview rooms here at our sexual assault investigations offices and turned them into what's commonly known as a soft interview room, a room that's much more conducive to these types of interviews. Things that as police officers maybe we don't always think about: the colors of the walls, the type and style of furniture, the ability to move that furniture around to make the room more conducive to that specific interview, the artwork on the walls. Every single piece of this is important in making that part of the process, the interview, a critical component of the investigation, the easiest as can be for a survivor of such a violent assault. And again, this was a project that was born out of a personal tragedy, and Tracy's going to talk about that here shortly. So again, through her support, we have been able to yet again take another step in improving our approach to sexual assault investigations here in Austin. So today, that's our focus. We've talked a lot as a community over the past couple of years about the DNA kits and the SAKI backlogs and UCR clearance codes and caseloads, and we've added additional staffing to the unit, both supervisory and investigative. We've taken a lot of steps to improve how we're approaching these investigations in our community, and this is the next step, and a very positive step. And again, I think that it highlights that this is a community-wide effort, and the fact that Tracy supported us in this, I think, is very valuable. So here in a moment, I'm going to yield to the district attorney, Margaret Moore, so she can speak a little bit about her expectations for this advancement, how it will improve the work that she and her staff do. And then you will hear from Tracy herself, you will hear her story, and you will hear what got us here today. So we're pleased to be here today. We're pleased to have these improvements. You'll have the opportunity here shortly to go and take a look at the room and videotape the room so you can get a look at what's been done here. But I truly believe that this will take what is a very difficult interview for, again, someone who has survived a horrific assault, and hopefully make that a little bit more tolerable, and that we're doing it in the best way that we can. So I can't say enough to thank Tracy for her support in getting us here today. And with that, I'm going to yield to the District Attorney, Margaret Moore. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. As the chief said, we've put a lot of effort and DA resources into our improvements to address the needs of sexual assault victims. We know how our child victims get handled through a very protective process at the Children's Protection Center. Over the long haul, though, we believe that our adult victims need a very supportive and comforting environment. One of the things that we've done is try more cases. And when we try those cases, we get feedback from jurors. That feedback is critical importance to us to improve the way we put on these cases in a courtroom. But that also backs up to working with our law enforcement agencies so that the investigations are also improved. And one of the comments that jurors make most often to us is their concern about what a victim has to go through in the course of bringing a case to trial, and how many times they're interviewed and how difficult that process is. So today we see this very important upgrade, if you will, to being able to provide a more supportive and comforting environment to folks who are going through possibly the very worst experience of their entire life. So our thanks goes to Tracy Matheson for leading this effort, for making it come about. And I am happy to be here today and see these beautiful rooms, and thank her for what she's done for us, and look forward to the way that it will improve all the work that the men and women of the Austin Police Department and the DA's office do to get victims through this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. I think we weren't sure we would make it, but we did, didn't we? I'm here because I'm a mama on a mission, and that is a job title that I didn't know I would ever have, but that has sort of become my pseudonym. I want to take you back to April 10th, 2017. I was at home. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon, and I received a phone call. It was my daughter's boss. She worked at the Soma store not far from our house, and she was calling. She said Molly hadn't shown up for work. That was very unusual because Molly was 10 minutes early if she was late. So I got in the car to drive the less than 10 minutes to check on Molly. And I went racing down her driveway, having no idea why she hadn't gone to work. She'd been at our house the night before for dinner, and everything was just as you would expect. There was no answer at the door. I eventually tried the door and went inside and called her name, couldn't find her. Went around the corner to the bathroom, and there her body was in the shower. And I had no idea what was going on. My healthy 22-year-old daughter is in the floor of a shower. I managed to figure out how to call paramedics, which I can't understand how I figured that out. They arrived shortly thereafter and confirmed what I had already figured out, that Molly was dead. And so then the questions start whirling through our mind. Why is she dead? Detectives showed up to the scene, and he took us to the car and explained to us that they were looking into the cause of death and that they would be in touch, he thought, within the next day or so when they were able to determine that. And so the nightmare had set in. In fact, our precious 22-year-old daughter was dead. He called the next afternoon, much earlier than we expected, and let us know that Molly's death had been ruled a homicide. She had been strangled, and she'd also been raped. So now the nightmare took a step that I can't even put into words for you. And I don't even know how I think back on that moment, and it's almost surreal to think. But we kept going and made it through day by day, and realized as the pieces came together and it became known that the person who was eventually arrested and indicted for capital murder in Molly's death is someone that was known by multiple jurisdictions in Texas, and no one had ever taken him off the streets. So we decided we had to do something, so we started a nonprofit. It's called Project Beloved, the Molly Jane Mission. And our mission statement is that Project Beloved strives to educate, advocate, and collaborate to change the conversation about sexual assault and empower survivors to find their voices. Starting a nonprofit is one thing, figuring out what we can do that would make a difference is another thing. we identified that we could make beloved bundles. And so we provide those to rape crisis centers and SANE departments in Texas and 7 other states. We've donated almost 2,000 at this point. A beloved bundle contains clothing, undergarments, hygiene products, flip-flops, a stress ball, and a journal. And they're available for advocates or SANEs to give to survivors after they've had a forensic exam. If law enforcement needs to take their clothing as evidence, they have something to get showered, hair combed, hair washed, teeth brushed, and walk out of the hospital with dignity. The second initiative is the reason that we're here today, the soft interview room. As I started to study and learn about trauma and its impact is real. We have learned a lot about the brain and what happens in the brain when trauma occurs, and I learned about a trauma-informed response. And a piece of a trauma-informed response is a soft interview room. I've gone to trainings with some of the nation's leading experts on trauma-informed response, and I realized I can't teach law enforcement how to be trauma-informed, but I could make it possible for them to take a step toward being in trauma-informed unit by providing them with a soft interview room. So I put it out there. We can do it. I knew that we couldn't just walk into an agency and take over and say, we're remodeling your space. We had to wait. So we waited, and slowly but surely we've heard from different departments, and Austin is our 3rd location that we have installed soft interview rooms, and I've probably got at least another half dozen waiting now. And the soft interview room is exactly what it sounds like. Cold, stark, and sterile is not trauma-informed, but an environment that is warm and inviting is trauma-informed. You have to think about what a victim is being asked to do in that room, and it's to share a story with details that are embarrassing and most surely traumatic and painful. And so to provide a space to do that where it might be comfortable improves our chances of getting better evidence and then hopefully making an arrest and then hopefully prosecuting and getting a conviction. Because the fact is, nationally we don't do a very good job in arresting and prosecuting those who commit sexual violence. I understand, I'm not naive enough to think that it's all about the room. The investigation itself needs to be trauma-informed, and I hope that by partnering with law enforcement agencies that this will be a way for us to start a conversation and help them if they want to seek out how to become trauma-informed, how to get trainings, then we will help make that happen. One thing I want to point out about the rooms, specifically, there's artwork on the walls. They're beautiful, 24 by 36 photographs. There's a second victim. She was killed 5 days after my daughter. The same person responsible for my daughter's death, or who has been indicted in her capital murder, has been indicted in Megan Getram's death. And she was an amateur photographer with a passion for traveling. And I contacted Megan's family and asked if we could use her photographs on the walls of these soft interview rooms, and they agreed. And it's a beautiful way to weave Megan's story into Project Blvd's, and we put all the furnishings in the room, and the last thing that we do is put the artwork up, and when we put the artwork up, it's as if the room feels finished. I think you'll agree when you see that they really are stunning and more meaningful than that. Another thing I wanted to share with you, in Texas there is now a law called Molly Jane's Law. It was passed this past legislative session and it became effective September 1. And Molly Jane's Law states that when law enforcement investigates a case of sexual assault, they shall go to an existing program which is called VICAP, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. It's run and administered by the FBI. It's been in place since the 80s. It's available in all 50 states, and it does not cost the law enforcement agencies any money to use VICAP, but it was created to find serial murderers and serial rapists. It's a behavioral database, and so what we're asking with Molly Jane's Law is that law enforcement will use VICAP. And this is going to help to connect dots between offenders and identify patterns of behavior so that we can find these serial offenders before they rape again or before their pattern escalates and results in someone's death. So I'm super excited about that and grateful to our representative in Fort Worth, Craig Goldman, who helped make Molly Jane's Law come reality. You know, I say a lot. I've said it for a long time. I didn't realize how important two little words were going to become, but we can do better. and we must. And that is kind of the driving force behind everything that we do. You know, just because we've done it the same way for so long doesn't mean that it's good enough. I think there's better ways to do it, and these soft interview rooms is a better way to do the investigative process with a sexual assault survivor. And I'm grateful to Austin PD for asking us to come and be a part of this and helping them do better. Because I think when we do better, it matters, and results will show that we're getting sexual predators off the street. So thank you very, very much for having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I think Tracy said it all, and I think her story resonates. And like I said, this is a true tragedy turned into something positive so that survivors of assaults in our community will have a better experience as they go through the investigative process. The purpose of being here today, obviously, is to show off these rooms and get you back there. If there are a few questions, we can take them. But again, we want to get you back to the rooms to let you see those.
What's the cost of these rooms?
I don't know. Yeah, we can get you the
Okay.
cost.
And is it just going to be survivors of sexual assault interviewed, or survivors of other types of crimes, suspects potentially?
This will be for the survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence cases right now.
In the little release here, it said that you'd offer steps that we can take as a community to assist and support survivors. What do you tell the public?
As far as what, Fred? I'm sorry.
What can the community do to assist and support survivors?
Well, I think be involved, whether it is joining organizations that support survivors of sexual assault, whether it is being engaged in the process. As a community, what we need to do most is make sure that what a difficult process this is, that we remove barriers, because we know that sexual assault is, if not the most underreported, one of the most underreported violent crimes committed, and we all need to work together to improve that reporting rate. And that's why we're working so hard as both the police department and the district attorney's office to make system improvements so that survivors are more willing to come forward, so that we have that opportunity to seek justice in those cases.
Encourage reporting.
One of the complaints that survivors had about the old interview rooms is that they could hear other folks telling their stories in other rooms. Is there any sort of soundproofing in these rooms to diminish that?
I think that's part of the design structure. You want to come?
Yeah, we have sound masking.
Do you mind just coming to the mic? Thank you. And
I don't know a lot
saying
about it. I know better about the sound masking, but my name's Katrina Clark, and I'm the manager of the Victim Services Division at the Austin Police Department. And so we've installed sound masking, and so it's white noise almost, I guess. Someone might be able to describe it better. It's something in the ceiling so that it's muffled. You can't hear what's being said from the rooms.
All right, well, we'll go line up tours if y'all want to get your cameras ready.